Today's case is not just about a crime. It's about deception, manipulation, and a plan so calculated that it cost two people their lives. A trusted husband, a young au pair, and a man lured into a home under the promise of fantasy, but walked into a trap. The Commonwealth says this was months of planning, digital manipulation, and murder disguised as self-defense. The defense says this entire story rests on one witness, a witness who only spoke after nearly a year in jail and a deal that changed everything. This is the case of Brendan Banfield, and the question before the jury is simple but chilling. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate that you all came back. I know yesterday was a short day. Today might be a long one, and you're in for several more following that. Please remember that your job here is to listen to the evidence. Take notes if you need to. There will be many details. And be thoughtful in how you consider this evidence when it's time to deliberate.
We're here today because Brendan Banfield, the man seated behind me, killed his wife, Christine Banfield, and another man named Joseph Ryan. Those two individuals had no reason to know each other but for the plotting and planning of Brendan Banfield. Christine, back in 2022, was 37 years old. She was an ICU nurse working at Inova Fairfax. She was married to Brendan, who was then 38, and they had a daughter, 4-year-old Valerie. Christine worked odd shifts. She was a nurse. If any of you know what nurses' hours are, she could work nights. The schedule was irregular. It didn't occur with a 9-to-5 pattern, so regular daycare was not an option for the family. They hired an au pair, Juliana Perez Magalhães. She was from Brazil. She was 22 years old when she joined the family. She provided care while Brendan traveled for work and Christine worked her nurse's hours. The family lived in the Reston area of Fairfax County at 13230 Stablebrook Way. You'll hear that address referenced. You'll see pictures of the home. You'll have the opportunity to understand what the layout of the house was, as it is very relevant to what happened in February of 2023. Taking you back, in August of 2022, Brendan began an affair with Juliana. Initially, it was just sex when Christine was at work or asleep, but eventually it developed into a relationship. They went on dates. They went to bars, clubs, dancing. They went on romantic bike rides. By the fall of 2022, they were fully in love, planning their future. On a trip to New York, Brendan revealed his desire to get rid of Christine. Divorce was not an option for him. He didn't want to lose custody of Valerie. He didn't even want to share custody of Valerie. He thought Christine was a terrible mother. He wanted her out of the picture. And he convinced young Juliana, 22 years old, not from the United States, living in his home, in love with him, that they should get rid of Christine.
He talked about hiring a hitman, finding someone to kill her for money. But he was concerned that it would tie back to him, that there would be too much evidence against him and that he could end up at risk. So they crafted a plan. They would use Christine's email accounts to create a fake profile to lure someone who was into kinky sex, violent sex. And they would get this guy to come into the house and fake rape Christine.
Brendan would be the hero of the day. He would show up, kill the guy, kill his wife, pretending that it had been that guy. That was the plan. They put it into action. Brendan created a FetLife account. If you're not familiar with it, it's a social networking app for people interested in fetishes, sexual kink. He posted as Christine, seeking fulfillment of this stranger rape fantasy. He and Juliana spent weeks chatting with potential victims, searching for just the right guy who would follow Brendan's plan to a T. Because remember, this plan hinged on several things. Christine never knowing that it existed, and Christine never being expected to meet with her potential fake rapist. In this community of people, there weren't many takers for such a risky plan. It had red flags all over the place. But by January 24th, 2022, Brendan had found his target, Joseph Ryan, posting as Taco Supreme 7000. Joe engaged in friendly conversation with who he thought was an attractive woman new to kink. Brendan, posting as Christine, spent a month creating this relationship with Joe that would eventually lead to Joe's murder. Meanwhile, other things were going on to prepare for this murder. Brendan bought Juliana a gun and took her to the shooting range to teach her to shoot. Brendan had Juliana help him test out the soundproofing of the new windows that had been installed at Stablebrook Way. By the time this plan was ready to be hatched, Joe was fully on board. He had not questioned any of the asks of him. He had continued to engage in this relationship and appeared to be the perfect willing victim. Brendan created the narrative that Christine desperately wanted to be raped. Posing as Christine, he told Joe what to do. Come to the home in Reston. The door will be unlocked. Christine will be asleep in bed. Come straight upstairs, cut off her clothing, tie her, rape her. Simple and fun. That was how it was posed.
Joe was willing to follow the rules Brendan set out while posing as Christine. They would not meet in person beforehand. Joe's phones would be left in the car. Joe was to bring a knife, zip ties, chains, and most importantly, he was not to stop. Even if she looked terrified. Even if she was calling for help. He was to follow through because that's what she really wanted. On February 24, 2023, Brendan Banfield's birthday, the plan was put into action.
Knowing that Christine had the day off, Brendan and Juliana arranged a fake outing for the zoo a fake outing at the zoo for Valerie. Juliana and Valerie packed a lunch, prepared for this fake outing. Christine, still in bed, asleep, at 6 a.m. Brendan takes her phone and Valerie downstairs. He chats with Joe to confirm a 7:20 arrival for the execution of the fake rape. And Brendan then disables the door lock, preventing it from automatically locking, turns off Christine's phone, and puts it in a drawer in the kitchen, where she couldn't possibly find it to call for help when she finds an intruder in her home. Brendan leaves the house, followed shortly by Juliana. Brendan drives to a nearby McDonald's. Juliana waits in the cul-de-sac. The plan to give a call out to Brendan as soon as she sees Joe. Valerie's in the back seat, and Juliana has a gun in her pocket. When Joe arrives, Juliana calls Christine's cell phone first to create a record of a fake warning, even knowing that the phone is turned off. She then calls Brendan to let him know that Joe is in the house. Brendan leaves the McDonald's, drives directly to the home, meets up with Juliana, and with Valerie in tow, they re-enter the house through the basement. Juliana, nervous, screws up the plan and calls 911, too early. She hangs up as soon as Brendan's giving her the signal that this wasn't the plan. They leave Valerie in the basement. They sneak up the stairs to the bedroom where they hear Joe Ryan and Christine. Brendan enters the bedroom first, shooting Joe in the head, picks up the knife that Joe had brought, and stabs Christine repeatedly in the neck. He directs Juliana to shoot Joe a second time with her gun. This time the bullet enters Joe's chest.
With Christine dead or dying, Brendan spends the next several minutes manipulating Joe Ryan's body, leaving Christine's blood on Joe's hands and pants. Juliana calls 911, this time as scheduled, to report the intruder. And Brendan tells police, "I shot him. He stabbed her." You'll hear all of this from Juliana, but we're not asking you to believe her alone.
You'll hear from witnesses and experts about all of the evidence that corroborates the facts presented. You'll see the FetLife chats. You'll see the Telegram messages. You'll hear and see the phone call details. You'll hear the 911 calls where Brendan admits to shooting Joe. You'll see body-worn camera video from the responding officers. You'll see photos of the crime scene and the physical evidence collected. And that's where you should focus your attention. Because while Juliana presents us with the narrative, that story that we wouldn't necessarily know but for her details, it is the blood evidence that you can rely upon without a doubt. The blood cannot lie. And the blood puts Brendan Banfield standing over Christine, stabbing her in the neck until she died. With that evidence, we will ask you to find Brendan Banfield guilty of these murders, the associated charges of neglecting his child, and of creating a danger for her in that home. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sands. All right. Defense, you're...
I think I can probably see
No. Yes.
You do.
or is that one?
No. You want to check Ms. Sands?
You're off. Here, I can check. Yep. I did, because I didn't want it to make all the banging noises. There you go. Green, let's go.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
You can put that in your pocket if you want.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We had a long day yesterday. We talked about many issues that are going to come up today in terms of the story the Commonwealth just told you. And what I think you should be looking out for in the evidence is timelines. To assess what they're saying and the evidence before you, you have to look very carefully at the timelines.
So the murder of Christine Banfield by Joe Ryan occurred on February 24th, 2023. The arrest of Juliana Perez Magalhaes took place in October of 2023. She was held for nearly another year before she made the statements that are the full and complete support of what the Commonwealth just told you. And she did that because the Commonwealth decided that they were going to give her something certain. They were going to give her a plea of guilty to a manslaughter, which is a lesser included offense, and guaranteed time served upon her testimony here today or tomorrow or whenever that testimony is. You're going to hear a timeline of events and evidence that you'll have an opportunity to look at, where she was arrested in October of 2023, and the whole reason she was arrested was to flip her against my client. You'll hear that evidence from someone other than her and other than me.
2 lives were lost. A child was left without a mother. And a story was built piece by piece, through messages, blood evidence, and testimony given under the weight of freedom itself. But in the end, this case isn't about emotion. It's about evidence, and about deciding whether the truth was revealed or negotiated. If you want more real courtroom breakdowns, real trials, and the stories juries must decide, subscribe and stay with us.